In this video, we are still talking about animals, or remember, we're still talking about invertebrates, but we are going to be following a different lineage. So first of all, we're going to be taking a look at animals that have specialized tissues. These are called the eumetazoa. And then we're going to be looking at this branch called radiata. And radiata means that the organisms in this classification have radial symmetry. They are also diploblastic, which means that they have two germ layers during embryonic development. And then we are further going to be talking about the Phyla Cnidaria and Phyla Ctenophora. So these are the phylum, or phyla. So this is Phyla Cnidaria and Phyla Ctenophora. And the cnidarians are just more commonly referred to as jellyfish or jellies, and Ctenophora are comb jellies. So first, let's take a look at this kind of classification of the radiata. And so these are all the organisms that have radial symmetry. And remember, radial symmetry just means that if the organism is kind of like this, you can basically cut it almost like a cake into these kind of equal portions that are mirror images of each other. They are diploblastic. Remember that di means two. And so during gastrulation, which remember this is during embryonic development, during gastrulation, two germ layers are going to form. So this is our diploblast here. And so diploblasts have an endoderm and an ectoderm. So they do not have a mesoderm. The mesoderm is only found in triploblastic organisms. And then the two phyla that are included in this group of radiata are phylum Cnidaria, which are marine jellies. They used to be called jellyfish, but jellyfish are not fish. And so the more kind of correct way to kind of call them is a jelly. And then phylum Ctenophora are these other jellies known as comb jellies. So looking at the phylum Cnidaria, so one kind of distinguishing feature of these animals is that they have these cnidocytes. And cnidocytes are the stinging cells. So if you've ever been swimming in the ocean and you've been stung by a jellyfish or a jelly, it's this cnidocyte that is to blame for that sting. So it can be located around the mouth or on tentacles. So you're probably familiar with kind of this basic shape of a jellyfish with these tentacles coming down. And so the cnidocytes are going to be kind of in these tentacles here. And their ultimate function is not to necessarily sting humans, but it helps them to capture prey and also deter predators. So I guess they do deter humans in the sense that we don't go out looking for jellyfish often because it hurts when we find them. Now, within these specialized cells, there are these kind of specialized organelles called nematocysts. And you can see here, so this is the kind of the cell, the whole cell, the cnidocyte. And then the nematocyst is kind of this organelle inside here. And they have this kind of almost like a spring-loaded hair-like projection. And whenever that hair-like projection gets triggered, so if something touches it, what happens is that there's this coil inside with this barb. When that hair-like projection gets triggered, basically it shoots the barb out, and the barb makes it kind of stick inside the tissue of the animal that it is stinging. And then it's got this thread here. And these threads, some of them are really long, so they can actually entangle prey. And they also give off toxins. And so it's the toxins that really make it hurt. I mean, the barbs also hurt, but it's the toxins that actually do most of the stinging as well. And for their prey, like fish and other maybe small organisms, the toxins can actually basically paralyze the prey and eventually kill it and then start to break it down for digestion. There are two different body plans associated with Cnidaria. There are the bell-like ones called the medusa, so you can see that here. And these are probably the ones that you're more familiar with when you think of a jellyfish or a sea jelly. And so these are the ones that are motile, and they've got this kind of bell with the tentacles hanging down. The mouth is also kind of basically this area here. There are also some Cnidaria that are this polyp form. And these are sessile. So these are ones that will attach to a substrate and then they don't move anymore. So the medusa is kind of free swimming. It can move around. This one is attached to a substrate. It also has a single opening. So like the medusa, it's got this kind of opening here that acts as a mouth and an anus. And then it's got these tentacles kind of sticking up from it. A more familiar kind of term that's associated with these polyp types would be sea anemones. Cnidaria have a fairly basic nervous tissue setup. So they don't have a nerve, or I'm sorry, they don't have a brain like humans do, but they have this thing called a nerve net. And so they do have these kind of organized network of nerves that go across the bell or the body of it. And they do have some motor and sensory functions. And so it might look like a jellyfish isn't able to do much, but they can actually move their tentacles. They can actually swim to a degree. They can, once they catch something in their tentacles, they can pull those tentacles towards their mouth in order to get the prey into the digestive area. It also helps with food digestion and then waste expulsion. We mentioned on some previous slides that when the Cnidaria stings its prey, it can then pull its prey towards its mouth. And mouth maybe isn't the best word to use because they kind of have one opening that goes into it, and they have this thing called a gastrovascular cavity. And you can see that on the picture here. This cavity kind of up inside the medusa. And then this one, this is more like a polyp version, like a sea anemone, and it has this kind of cavity inside here. There is one opening that includes a mouth and anus. And so the mouth takes in food and the anus gets rid of waste products. You can see that here. So this is a mouth anus kind of leading into this gastrovascular cavity. Same thing here where it shows a mouth. It doesn't really label it as an anus, but it is also the anus here. And what happens is once the food is kind of drawn up into the gastrovascular cavity, extracellular digestion occurs. So this means that enzymes are secreted into this cavity, which breaks down the food particles into smaller nutrients that are then absorbed into the other tissues of the Cnidarian. This is kind of similar to what happens in humans. So food goes into our gastric tract, and there are enzymes that are excreted into our stomach and our intestines, and that those enzymes break down our food, and then we absorb the broken down or digested nutrients. Cnidaria do not have real circulatory, respiratory, or excretion or excretory organ systems. Most of this happens due to diffusion between cells in the water. So nutrients, once they're broken down inside that cavity, the nutrients get distributed to other cells. Gases are diffused with the environment, and waste products are excreted with the environment. Cnidaria can reproduce asexually through budding or sexually by releasing gametes into the water, and external fertilization occurs. So that means that the sperm fertilizes the egg out in the water and not inside the organism itself. There are a couple of different classes in the phylum Cnidaria. And so there's class Anthozoa, class Scyphozoa, class Cubozoa, and class Hydrozoa. Class Anthozoa includes these animals that are called flower animals. That's where the name kind of comes from. They have this polyp body form, and it includes those sea anemones and corals. So this is a coral right here, and this is a sea anemone. They typically have this kind of cylindrical or round shape to them. And they are sessile. So they are attached to the substrate. They are unable to move around once they grow into an adult. Class Scyphozoa are the cup animals, and these are the ones that you probably think of when you think of the word jellyfish. And so these are all the marine jellies, and it only includes marine jellies. And the prominent body form is this medusa form here, but they do have a polyp stage in their life cycle. So you can see here that they have sexual reproduction that forms a zygote, and then there's actually a free-swimming larvae that eventually settles on a substrate. So the substrate is just the material or the bottom of the ocean, which forms this polyp, and then that polyp can bud off in order to produce the free-swimming medusa. Class Cubozoa are also known as box jellyfish, and the medusa is kind of box shaped, and it's a little bit hard to see in the picture here, but they have these kind of ridges to them that give them this kind of boxy looking shape. They include some of the most venomous cnidarians. So in Australia, there are some beaches where it is very dangerous to swim because the species of box jellyfish found there can actually kill you if you get stung. I got to travel to Australia many years ago now, and I was scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. And while you were scuba diving, you either had to wear a wetsuit or something that they called a stinger suit. And I didn't need a wetsuit because the water wasn't that cold. But a stinger suit is just kind of a thin, it's almost like a thin wetsuit. It's just made out of a different material. But the sole purpose was just to protect your skin in case you came in contact with some box jellyfish. And you can see in this picture here, some of them are very, very tiny. We do get some species of box jellyfish in South Carolina along the coast of Myrtle Beach here. And they can sting you and they are going to hurt, but they're not the severely fatal kind that are found in places like Australia. Class Hydrozoa consist of these jellies that have a hydromedusa. And so the hydromedusa is this velum or muscular veil below the bell. So this part would be called the bell, and this would be the velum. And the most notable example of hydrozoa are the Portuguese man-o'-wars, which is what's being shown in this picture here. And we do get these along the coast of South Carolina at times. And I actually got stung by one down in Florida one time when I was at the beach when I was a teenager. And it was excruciatingly painful. I thought I had been bit by something like a shark. It felt like something had taken a bite out of my leg. So when I got out of the water, I had these big welts going across my thigh from where I had basically brushed up against one of these Portuguese man-o'-war. So I highly recommend that you do not get stung by them if you can avoid it. It is not pleasant. The other phylum in the Radiata are the ctenophores, and these are more commonly referred to as comb jellies. They are diploblastic and have radial symmetry, just like the other Radiata, so that includes the cnidarians, but they lack the cnidocytes, so they do not have the stinging abilities that the other cnidaria have. You can see a picture of them here. Some of them are really cool. Some of them can do bioluminescence, where they can basically glow in the water, um, and they're just really cool looking critters.